Hello there, Pep Talk UK, Pro Beez, part of the Pep Talk boys, and delighted to be joined by a man that's going to help me round up some of this year's action. We're going to talk about a potential robbery of the year, and I'm joined by Dirty Harry.
How's it going? You okay?
Remember the film Dirty Harry?
I do the was it 64 Magnum? That's, yeah, it was pretty good actually. Yeah, watch it at Christmas with the old man.
Yeah. So this year, obviously we've seen a lot of big fights, we've seen upsets, we've seen a lot of controversy, but we want to talk about a potential robbery of the year. Now I know you're a man that tunes into the big fights. I mean, you're always paging me, you're always sending me some DMs up to my opinion about some fights. I want to really gather from you what you thought about what was the most unjust fight of the year in terms of the outcome.
Do you know, that's a really good question. There's a couple that sort of come to mind when you start thinking of it, but if it comes to the most unjust, in my opinion, I would actually say Callum Smith, John Ryder.
Oh wow. Do you know there was a lot of debate online about that fight?
Yeah.
Why would you say that it was unjust?
I'll be honest, I watched the fight thinking that Ryder would get knocked out quite quickly. And I like Ryder as a fighter. I really liked the way he bounced back from his losses and came forward, but I thought he was beating B-level opposition, was going to step in with an A-level opponent in Callum Smith, and Khan stuck. Instead, he sat on his chest, he made him fight a fight he didn't want to fight, lots of people were going after, oh, it was close, you could have scored it either way. Well, I scored it the Ryder way. And then at the end, when the scorecards were that wide, I just thought that's not fair. That's why when you say unjust, that's the one that sticks out in my head as, like that wasn't fair, that was unjust.
A lot was made of Callum Smith being the best super middleweight in the world, and there was big talk about him fighting David Benavidez.
I think the talk as well was more around Canelo at Anfield.
Canelo at Anfield. You know, a lot of fans feel like that decision was linked to the potential fight at Anfield. But I think the fight itself is, talking to a lot of boxing fans, you know, it's not my opinion, but talking to a lot of fans, they feel like the scoring was well off the mark. But we have seen in boxing this year, we've seen fights where it's been a lot closer than the scoring has suggested.
Yeah.
And in that fight, you said it, and John Ryder really made a good account of himself. You know, he really performed well as an underdog. He went out there, did his stuff, and he surprised us all. I think, you know, Callum Smith would say that, even he would say that John Ryder was a tough opponent.
I think, what did he say? I think Callum Smith came out and said, on my worst night, I beat him on his best night. Which, okay, I mean, yeah, on paper, you can't erase it. He did beat him in the sense that, you know, he got the decision. The reality and of what fans perceived and thought and saw, it varies in different opinions. I think everyone's got their own camp, their own way of looking at it. What would be really interesting to sort of see now moving forward is if that kind of picks up more traction, and if Callum Smith can get the fights that he's looking to get, but if he does come back and revisit that, what do you think of that sort of setup?
Well, you know, Eddie Hearn said it after that performance. He was getting phone calls.
Yeah.
And what's interesting now, I think, myself, I thought prior to that fight that Callum Smith was just simply the best super middleweight in the world. Big for the weight, really long, rangy, powerful. I think the first time I laid eyes on Callum Smith live was in Manchester when he obliterated Luke Blackidge.
Okay, that was a really good fight.
I actually saw Luke Blackidge in the bar afterwards, and what Callum Smith had done to him really told me how good of a fighter Callum Smith is and how dangerous he's going to become. And he became a world champion.
Yeah,
and he winning the World Boxing Super Series as well.
On foreign soil, going over to Saudi. He put a great performance against George Grove. I mean, it's a tough one because mentally, I still consider Callum Smith the best super middleweight in the world.
Yes.
Even though I also think...
You don't rate Benavidez?
I do rate him, but I think he's a bit one-dimensional. In that he just comes forward with that power, and that's what he's got. I think Callum Smith is a more complete fighter. He's got technique, he's got speed, he's got power. I think the only thing now stopping Callum Smith at super middleweight is it's not John Ryder. It's going to be Callum Smith. I think he's going to outgrow the weight pretty quickly. Joe Galahad has already said his body fat's coming to a point where he doesn't believe it's healthy.
Yeah.
And he may have to step up.
But you look at the light heavies. Woo!
Yeah, again, but then
That is a stacked division.
that is stacked. But then I'd fancy Callum Smith at light heavy. I would like to see him against Bivol first and pick up a belt and then go in and start unifying. Leading up to Beterbiev, I think would be really good.
But before he potentially does move up, Billy Joe Saunders.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of talk about that. I think when Billy Joe became a 2-weight world champion, people out there were saying, well, you might not be big enough, you might not be strong enough. But against John Ryder, it was a much smaller man that gave Callum Smith a hard night.
Yeah.
What would Billy Joe do against Callum Smith at super middle?
The thing is with Billy Joe is I in my opinion, I think he's a genius. He gets a lot of stick, he gets a lot of criticism for his behaviour out the ring, and I think with Billy Joe, if he has an off night where the opponent and him don't gel, he doesn't perform, and that's. But then you stick him in.
What did you make of his performance on the KSI Logan 2 undercard? He got a lot of criticism for that performance.
I want to say, actually, I don't know Billy Joe, and I don't have any sort of affiliation with him, because I'm actually going to sort of defend him a little bit. Like, the guy had jet lag. He'd been held up at, I think, customs or something. He'd been unsettled. It was a TBA opponent, so he didn't have a style or a person in mind that he could train for. So he's not really that focused. He's ill. I think he had a cold and jet lag on top of that. Or flu, it was flu, but then all matchroom fighters get the flu. And I didn't think much of it. I think it was a big opportunity that didn't really pull off. But he got out in America. He got to run out another fight under his belt this year, which is what he needs. On to the next one. I think it's going to be another situation where Eddie Hearn probably got a lot of calls after that. Yeah. From people trying to set up fights.
You think Canelo made the call from Mexico?
Yeah. Eating his Mexican beef. I think Canelo. I don't think Canelo will step in with Callum Smith. I really don't. I think it's the fight we want, and I think it's the fight that Sky and everyone's going to push for. But I don't think he'll step in with Callum Smith. Billy Joe's been calling for that fight for years. And Billy Joe has publicly said before that after his performance against Lemieux, which was on a Golden Boy card, that Golden Boy turned around to him and said, or officials turned around and said, yeah, we're not putting you with Canelo. I think now a few years on, a different weight, I think if it's going to happen, it's going to happen next year. And I'd really like that to happen. That's the one I prefer out of Callum Smith and Billy Joe. In terms of versus Canelo, I prefer Billy Joe.
Canelo, he vacated his light heavyweight title that he did. Kovalev for. Now, our good mate Dean White, it says Canelo, he has a good habit of vacating once he's achieved what he wants to do. He has impeccable timing in terms of picking his fights. The talk is potentially that he might fight Callum Smith at Anfield. We were talking about that.
Yeah.
Maybe he did call Eddie Hearn for that fight. Maybe. I mean, how amazing would it be to see Canelo
in the UK?
It would be at Anfield.
It would be amazing. It would be an event. It'd be one of those events where, it would almost. I'm trying to think of the best way to sort of put it. Almost once in a lifetime sort of thing, because it'd be the first fight back at Anfield for boxing in about 100 years. All the Scousers, the atmosphere they get out of Anfield at the football is insane. They'd bring that to Anfield for the boxing. That would be immense. It's just...
And Liverpool potentially might win the Premier League ahead of that fight, so the whole city will be buzzing.
It would be. I mean, where I really want that scenario. I really do. Where I guess it's the skeptic in me sort of sits there and looks at it and goes, well, Canelo's got his deal with DAZN. Will he do it? Won't he do it? But then on the flip side of that, and the other side of that coin, he's having a lot of arguments with De La Hoya recently about his opponents, about the things he's been doing. He does seem a little bit more set on legacy now that he's kind of earned his money. Again, you know, I think in an ideal world we'd see him fight Billy Joe and Callum Smith next year.
Ooh.
That's the dream. That's what boxing fans want, you know.
That would be a 2020 that will never be forgotten. We're slightly digressing.
Yeah, sorry.
Let's talk about, we talked about potential robberies, what people are speculating as unjust results. You wanted to talk about Warrington versus Galahad. I mean, there are arguments to this. I mean, the arguments is Kid Galahad, fantastic game plan, neutralising Josh Warrington. But there are people that say, hold on, maybe you need to do a bit more to take the title away from the champion in his city. Yeah,
I get that. That's such a hard one to really talk about, I guess, because what I thought from watching it is, Galahad had a great game plan, but it wasn't very good on the eye, and it was almost like nicking rounds, which it's not an official rule. It's like an unofficial rule in boxing. Like, you've got to take the belt from the champion, and they're doing it in Warrington's backyard, home fans. You know, he was an away fighter in a lot of ways. Galahad, he was an away fighter. He's a matchroom fighter fighting on a Frank Warren show. He was going to have no favours done for him. I thought the only way that fight could, I guess, be justified in Warrington's favour is almost because the punches he was missing were so close to hitting that judges may have looked at it and gone, oh, okay, yeah, he's landed more than he actually has. I think Galahad won, but I don't think he did himself any favours with his approach, with the spoiling, which is what he did. He spoiled Warrington and just shut him down.
But some people might argue and say, no, I'm trying to look at it from both sides. You know? Mayweather, defensive genius. Yeah, knew how to neutralise his opponents. He retired as an undefeated fighter, right? Calls himself TBE, one of the best that did it. Galahad, he neutralised Warrington. How come Mayweather gets heralded and Galahad doesn't do enough? Why?
Mayweather was doing a lot of the neutralising, a lot of all of this stuff when he had the belt. So people couldn't nick it from Mayweather. They had to win it from Mayweather. If you look at the transition of Mayweather's career and fighting style, when he was younger on the come up, you know, he was a beast. He was a machine. KO merchant in a lot of ways, and still had that slick defence, but he still had the power and he could still bang. You then had, I think it was after he beat De La Hoya, you know, he'd split with Arum, beat De La Hoya, you know, self-promoted it, I guess, for the first time, co-promoted with Golden Boy, made his money, and then he started to shift more towards that, defensive genius, just neutralise, win on points, sort of style of fighting.
Remember his words were to get in there, win easily, take no punishment.
And walk away with his brain and with his money, which is what he did.
And not punch drunk.
He's not punch drunk. He's got more money than I could ever dream of having. Mission accomplished on his front. Where I think you could say that Galahad maybe, you know, didn't do enough is because he's gone into the champ's backyard. Yes, he shut him down. I think if you almost take a step back, the Ingle Gym style of boxing, it can go one of two ways. You're either witnessing almost like magic. You know, Brendan Ingle was a genius. He's one of the geniuses the sport has produced. He's not just a Sheffield legend, but he's a British boxing and Irish boxing legend. That can never be sort of disputed. Now, that style that he teaches his boxers and that he gets his guys to fight with, when it's on, it's on. You're watching something where in, out, the movement, the switch hitting, everything, it just gels and fits. Now, on the other side, if it doesn't go well, if the fighter's not on, it looks just like they're spoiling. You know, like the Galahad fight, you watched it and it was a tough fight to watch. Galahad Warrington, I found. And world title fights shouldn't be hard to watch from a fan's perspective. They should be exciting. They should be, you know, enjoyable in a lot of ways, because that's what you're staying up for. That's the main event. And I think if you break down the rules of the sport, you know, Marcus of Queensberry, Galahad won, but I understand why Warrington got the decision at home, defending his title.
Yeah. To kind of conclude where we are, the key question is, what was the biggest robbery? Was it a bigger robbery, Smith versus Ryder, in your view, or was it Galahad and Warrington versus Warrington? What fight did you
I think
feel?
I feel Callum Smith
unjust?
and John Ryder. I feel that Galahad, he just didn't do enough. He won, but he didn't win by enough, which sounds mental to say. But we all kind of know how boxing works in some ways. He's coming as an away fighter to win a world title. At the end of it, he said he still felt fresh. He still felt like he could do more. Well, you should have done more. Callum Smith, John Ryder, I sat at the end. I actually watched it in the pub.
Right.
And
with a few bevies.
Yeah. So what I did was, at the end of it, I was watching it going, okay, I really don't think that's what happened. I watched it the next day sober to try and see, and I did all the old tricks like turn the commentary off, and I still had it the same. And I think a lot of people are going, oh, well, there were lots of rounds we could give it either way, and everyone goes, oh, and I gave it to Smith. I was like, well, I gave that to Ryder. He sat on his chest and he put it on Callum Smith. Cut him. Those cuts were bad. You know, there was every reason that fight could have been stopped on cuts. Just relentless. He knew it was his world title fight. He grabbed the bull by the horns and he went for it. That's very unjust for me. That's on British soil.
You seem angry.
I'm not angry. I guess it's sort of like, well, it's one of those things where I follow Callum Smith. I am, believe it or not, a big fan of Callum Smith, and I have followed John Ryder. I've been watching him on the comeback trail, building himself up, and you know, moving up a weight and going, oh, he's the smaller man. How's he going to do this? And then, oh, he's knocking guys out. He's carried his power.
He was so impressive against Sorokin.
Sorry?
He was so impressive against Sorokin.
Yeah.
It was really impressive.
And it's just that sort of stuff. And then it was like, okay, now he's fighting Callum Smith. And I did think he was going to come unstuck. And he didn't. He boxed out of his skin. He fought out of his skin. He showed heart. He showed he's got an engine. He carried his power into the later rounds. Everything you'd want to see from a world title winning performance. And then at the end, the cards were so far apart that it was like, that is very unjust. Because if it was like, oh, split decision, Callum Smith nicked it by 2 rounds on one judge's card, I'd be like, do you know what, fair enough. I can live with that, but you know, I can accept that. But to see it that far wide after is like, nah, that's not what happened. That's wrong.
Well, just before we go, why are we seeing fights being scored so widely? Like, when the fight is a lot closer, why is that the case? I know obviously scoring is very subjective. Depends what you're looking for. You know, are you looking for someone that's pressing the action? Are you looking at someone that's not getting hit as much? I mean, we're seeing some really wide scores.
And it's not just, I think we've mentioned before, and we can come back onto it, the Jaime Munguia-Dennis Hogan fight, which was, I think, a very good example, actually. If you've got someone coming forward and they're throwing power punches, now that was scored in Mexico, so Mexican judges, they like that style in, you know, let's stand, let's bang, Mexican come forward, we love it. And then you're looking at the sort of British boxing sort of judges now, for some of the fights they're scoring, and it's so off. I think a lot of it has to do with sort of who's a home fighter, who's an away fighter. A lot of it, Callum Smith, sorry to come back to it, but Callum Smith was talking about Anfield before he even walked into that ring to fight John Ryder. it almost seemed like a done deal that everybody in boxing in that camp was looking to get Canelo at Anfield in 2020. It was almost like they overlooked it. So when you have that, Callum Smith's fighting in Liverpool, he's a Liverpool fighter, the crowd is screaming for Callum anytime he throws a punch. Judges are human. They're going to be sat ringside listening to what's around them. You know, if they score around one way or the other, they're going to be more influenced by what's around them. And, you know, but then what do? Do we put judges in a room in the back, soundproof, or just headphones on watching a fight? How do we fix that? I think it's a good question. There's lots of answers. Some of them could be right, some of them could be wrong. But I hope next year it gets a lot better.
Right, it's been a pleasure with the man, Dirty Harry himself. You'll be seeing a lot more of him in 2020 on Pep Talk UK. Remember, like, share, comment, subscribe. Pep Talk boys, Dirty Harry.
Over and out. Cheers.
Over and out. Pep Talk UK, Pro Beez, Dirty Harry.